Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be understanding and dealing with the concept of role of operations control in goods and services business. The learning objectives. At the end of this session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by operations planning and operations control. What are the various roles and activities that have been undertaken for operations control in goods and services businesses? Now let's first understand what do we mean by operations control. Operations control is the process of planning, controlling and supervising as well as manufacturing the production activities which are the daily routine required in the operations management. So here in this case, what we are trying to do, we are trying to identify, we are trying to control the activities with respect to the manufacturing and production activity, and we have to implement the principles of management as to planning, organizing, directing, staffing, controlling, and supervising. So, when all these activities are being undertaken in an organization, in order to see that the business and services are being delivered effectively, such activity is called as operations planning and control. The operations control management is critical in business because it's efficient management, control, and supervision of the commodities, services, and people. So it's not only related to the business, it's not only related to the goods and services, but operations planning and control is related to a critical process of undertaking and controlling all the activities with respect to the services, with respect to the people, with respect to the management, and so on. And hence, it is an essential element of controlling the business activities to be undertaken by the business firm in the short run as well as in the long run. Now let's understand the procedure or activities that has been performed or undertaken during the operations planning and control. The various activities that have been undertaken in operations planning and control are: the first one, respond, experience, participate, launching, designing, analyzing, engagement, physical product, and the technology, and lastly, the cultural. Now first, let's see what do we mean by respond. In terms of an operations planning and control, we have to understand what is the response of each and every individual activity that has been undertaken. Right from the process of the input of raw material into the organization to the completion of the finished goods, the response of each and every activity or the individual component along with the participant is needed to be undertaken. And based on the response, the further process of experience comes into existence. The experience with respect to how the activities will be performing, whether there will be a positive or negative impact, all those activities are needed to be taken into account, and then we have to analyze and see that how the activities will be performing. Participation. In terms of the participation, we have to see and identify that all the components or the factors of the participation or the distribution chain are actively participating and the activities are being in a coordinated way. That is, the material moving from one department to another department is being conducted in an organized way, and it is always in a proper sequence or process of activities. Then comes the picture or scenario of launching. So in terms of operations planning and control, we need to see that whenever and at what place or time the product or the goods or the services or the material is been required, that particular product or goods is been launched at the specified time period. Launching of the product at the time period on the specified place is essentially required. And for those particular concern, the control of activities with respect to the respond, experience, and participate is essentially required. So, and hence we have to see that the respond and participate activities is a forward move to the launching activity. Then comes the picture of designing. So, in terms of the designing, the activity that needs to be performed is how do you design a particular product? Based on the demand for a product into the market, based on the availability of the resources, we need to design a product which has been applicable to the need of the consumer and it satisfies the want of an individual. And hence, designing is a critical stage. So, controlling on the design is essentially important because it identifies about what amount of your raw material and component will be utilized and what will be the output or the product that you are going to manufacture or you are going to produce. Analyzing. Now, with respect to analyzing, one has to analyze about what are the activities that have been undertaken in the organization, what amount of raw material is being consumed, and so on. So, answering to all the WH questions with respect to why, when, where, how, and in what manner the resources are being utilized, they have been completed, and the process of manufacturing is being undertaken. All those activities needs to be controlled by the respective department, and hence the analysis of an environment with respect to the internal and external factors and the completion of the process or the cycle of manufacturing is essentially required. Engagement. The term engagement here means the involvement of all the participants of the manufacturing, distribution, and so on. So, whosoever are the participants of the distribution chain, the manufacturing process, the supply chain process, the operational activities, everyone must contribute and get engaged in those types of activities. And hence, it is essentially required that engagement of all the participants of the chain is needed to be required and is to be seen that everyone is equally contributing and they are actively participating. The physical product. When all these processes, that is step number 1 to step number 7, are being conducted in an effective way, we actually get the physical product. The physical product that is being received, that is the finished goods, must be an outproduct of a qualitative nature. Here, in this case, the organization may be aiming for a quantity, but simultaneously, we have to also control on the quality. So here in this case, the physical product that you are aiming for, the business or the process or the cycle or the activity for which it is being undertaken, it should be in a controlled way, and accordingly, the physical or the finished goods should be of a perfect nature. Technology. The technology that we are using for a betterment of a particular product to be it more effective, qualitative, and which is acceptable to the consumer, it is completely based on the technology that we are using. The major benefit of using a technology is to ease the production activity. That is, the time duration that has been required to manufacture a single product, that may get reduced or may get saved when we use an advanced technology which is available. Simultaneously, the time is being saved, the cost is being incurred, and accordingly, you can more focus on the production activity. And lastly, the cultural factor. The cultural factor or the activity performed in these particular stages, whether the product is acceptable or affordable and is being taken by the consumers as per the culture that has been into existence. So, with respect to the operational control, we have to see that all the cultural aspects, either to the internal environment or the external environment, are being fulfilled and they are being acceptable to the consumers. And hence, the response or the control on cultural factors also needs to be seen and taken into account. Now let's see what are the key benefits in the operational control. There are around three key benefits in the operational control. The number one is product quality. With respect to the product quality, one can understand that if there is an operational control system into existence, the quality of the product can be controlled in an effective way. Now, let's take an example at this particular stage, that when you are manufacturing a particular product and the goods are being transferred or been moving from raw material to the finished goods stage. Now, when the goods have been moving from these particular phases, if there is an operational control into existence, it specifically clearly identifies about what amount or what quality or what quantity of raw material is to be placed on the each of the individual level. So for those particular concern, the control on quality is been essentially maintained and it has been looked into after for benefit of the control of all those activities. The next factor is productivity. Productivity in terms of the qualitative terms as well as the quantitative terms. When we as an organization or the operational activities are being undertaken, the organization is aiming to produce the goods and services of the productivity nature. The goods that you are manufacturing or the services that are needed to be delivered in those particular concern, when operations control is into existence, the product that has been manufactured is always of a fruitful nature, which is beneficial to the public at large, and accordingly, either increasing the quantity and quality of the product is essentially observed and it is seen. And hence, productivity is automatically controlled in terms of the operations planning, scheduling, and control. And lastly, the ultimate is the customer satisfaction. What we are aiming for or what we are looking for is the customer who is the end user of our product gets ultimately satisfied by using our product. And when there is an effective operations control into existence, the customer gets satisfied with the usage of the product, because the operational control activities are having a control on the quality as well as the quantity of a particular product, and hence ultimately it leads to the customer satisfaction. The another perspective that one has to remember is reducing the operating cost. Now, in this case, when the operational control activities are being undertaken, it reduces the cost of the organization, because the operational control activity specifically focuses on the usage of technology. When the technology that has been available in the market and in the world, it has been used by the operations department, it increases the quality of the product, the quantity of the product, and simultaneously gives a certain product which is available at a very easy stage or at an early stage. And hence, the time that an organization or an operations department has to spend is also being saved. And hence, the operating cost of the activities or the product is also being automatically reduced. Now, let's understand what are the various components in the operations control. The various components in the operational control are: the number one is time, place, cost, the object, the quality, the quantity, and the customers. And so in this case, these are the various components in the operational control. With respect to the time, one has to see that whatever activities are being scheduled or decided to be completed, they must be completed and finished within the specified time period. Only then we can say that the operational control is into existence. The place. The place plays a very important role in understanding which activity has to be performed at what place and at what point of time. And hence, the place plays a very important role in identifying the location of the control for a particular product or for a particular activity. The object. The object in this particular component of an operations control identifies about where the operational control needs to be applied and on what operations control is needed to be undertaken. Either the operational control activity is to be emphasized on a product, on the raw material, on the quantity, on the quality, on the cost, on the supply chain, on the distribution chain, on the manufacturing chain, on the shop floor, or on the employees, and so on. So here in this case, we have to identify the object on which the operational control is being required. The quality. Ultimately, every product that has been manufactured or it has been produced, we try to aim to manufacture those products on the basis of the quality, wherein it is acceptable to the consumers and fit for the consumption for them. And hence, the quality of the product always needs to be maintained in an effective way and at the optimum level. And hence, quality plays an important role in identifying or in seeing that operational control will help to increase the quality of product. The another factor that one has to understand is the concept of cost. Now, when we understand or deal in the terms of costing, here in this case, we need to identify which type of cost we are trying to either control. The cost either related to the prime cost, the factory cost, the operational administrative cost, the selling and distribution cost, or which type of overheads the company is or the businessman is aiming for. So, control on cost with respect to the either manufacturing, which is a direct expense, or an indirect expense needs to be identified, and then accordingly the cost can be controlled in the organization. And hence, in terms of the operational control, the cost also is equally important to be controlled in order to see that the profit margin is always being set and shared with all the components. The customers. And in terms of the customers, the customer is the end user of a particular product. And hence, the operational control activity also is needed to be decided and to be seen for the control on the customers. And hence, whatever product the customers are demanding, these particular products should be fulfilled and be supplied in the specified time period. And accordingly, it is to be seen that they are utilizing and getting the benefits of those products as and when it is being required. And lastly, the concept of quantity. So in terms of the quantity, one has to understand about how many goods has to be produced. If those particular goods are being produced, then what will be the specified time period, what will be the amount of requirement of raw material, and so on. And hence, control on quantity along with the quantity is essential, quality is essentially required, and one has to look for or control on the both the factors. Now let's understand what are the various three types of business operations control. The major three operation of business control activities are with respect to the operating, the investing, and lastly, the financing. In terms of the operating, it is dealing with the concept of the utilization of raw material to the process of finished goods. And here, in this case, we have to see that whatever operating activities are being conducted on the shop floor, all those activities are of the business nature, and hence operational control activity on those goods services is essentially required. In terms of the investing, in whenever we say that we are investing a certain sum of money, that particular investment may be either a short-term investment or a long-term investment. For a short-term investment, the amount that is been required is also a bit less, but at an urgent stage. In terms of the long-term investment, the amount that is been required is of a greater quantity, whereas the time duration for investment is also of a huge concern. And hence, the amount of investing is also more or bit higher or larger. In terms of financing, we have to understand about what is the availability of funds available into the market. The fund available into the market may be available for the short-term period or for the long-term period. And hence, the business operational activities with respect to the operating, investing, and financing needs to be undertaken in a very effective way. Now let's understand the process of input and output transformation model. The input and output transformation model clearly specifies about which activities or which components are being monitored by the organization. In terms of the production department, one has to understand what are the various inputs that have been given to the organization. The inputs that may be given to the organization may be related to either capital, the materials, the equipment, the facilities, the labor, the suppliers, and the knowledge along with time. In terms of the environment, we have to deal with both the factors of the environment. The environment which is of an internal nature and the environment which is of an external nature. The factors or the components of the environment are the customers, the regulatory agencies, the suppliers, the economy, the competitors, the technology, the government, the agencies, the middlemen, and so on. Now let's look at the concept of transformation system. The transformation system is been laid on the four foundational parameters, that is the alteration, transportation, storage, and the inspection. Now, alteration is a particular concern wherein a manager has to take a decision about which product is to be altered according to the need and requirement of raw material. If there is a certain change or need in the requirement of a raw material, then which amount is to be replaced or altered on the position. In terms of the transportation, one has to take the decision about how the goods needs to be moved from one place to another place, one department to another department, and so on. In terms of storage, the decision with respect to what amount or what quantity and quality of goods are needed to be stored, where it has to be stored, all those decisions are needed to be undertaken. And in terms of inspection, a regular and frequent inspection or checking of all the raw material is essentially required, and then accordingly, the action needs to be initiated. All those activities with respect to the transformation model are being undertaken for the monitoring and control. Monitoring and control with respect to the scheduling and processing of the activities, which is means focusing on creating an output for a particular product. That particular output may be either related to the goods or it may be either related to services. Now let's understand why do we need operations control. Operations control is a major unit that must initially stand for a product or for a service which is needed to be in a successful way. So in order to see that the operational activities that have been conducted in an organization are very much successful, we need to have an operational control into existence. Now let's take an example. In an oil and gas corporation that has sent products to reservoirs in order to make them available to large number of customers or the consumers. So oil and gas agency, what does it do? It build or it creates a certain amount of large amount of cans, and accordingly the product has been transported or it has been moved from one place to another place, and all those activities are being controlled with the help of a coordination between the transportation agencies and demand that is available into the market. And hence one has to see that how the reservoirs are there into existence, what amount of goods or services can be manufactured, and how those can be transferred or can be given to the customers. The operational management activities, it ensures that the delivery is quite efficient, it is quite well prepared in advance and is always scheduled. So why the scheduling is important at this particular stage? Because one has to understand the demand and supply of a particular product, and according to the demand and supply, the goods must be made available to the needed to the consumers on the specified time period. And for those particular concern, the demand should be on time, and accordingly the schedule that has been prepared for the delivery of the goods and services should be followed very effectively. People achieve more productivity rises when they use the operation management. So it has been generally observed, and the research always shows that wherever there is a situation of implementation of operational control, the productivity, the output is always increasing, and ultimately the organization, the consumers, the department, and everyone is getting benefited out of those activities. Now, what are the various types of control or activities in the operations control? The first activity that has been undertaken is operations on the line. So, the activities which has been conducted for on the line, that is on a straight line, is called the operational line activity of an line nature. The second activity is job shop customers. Operation of the job shop customers are satisfied with this sort of service when it tailors the service to the client needs. So in this particular case, the client or the customer gives a certain order to the respective company or the manufacturing agency, and accordingly, as per the desire, as per the demand from a particular consumer, the job shop activity is being undertaken, and accordingly the product is being designed. Intermittent operations. So intermittent operations are the activities which have been collected or conducted between the coordination of the manufacturing department and the ultimate consumers. So the communication and coordination between the departments of a manufacturing concern and the inputs that have been received by the organization from the customers, those particular activities are needed to be coordinated in a well effective way, and then all the intermittent operations are needed to be undertaken. Some service endeavors are one of a kind and are of a seldom duplicated. So here in this case, service endeavors are a particular concern wherein they are dealing with providing certain amount of services of a qualitative nature. And in this case, a qualitative service which is being provided to the consumers or to the people should be always in an effective way and timely delivered. So here we come to the understanding that the process of planning, controlling and supervising the manufacturing activities and the production activities as well as the service as well as the goods is the concept of operations control management. So here in this case, all the activities are needed to be undertaken in a very well effective and coordinated and organized way, and then only we can say that there is an involvement of operations control management. It is very critical in process, and accordingly efficient management with respect to the controlling is essentially required, and one has to see that it is implemented to both the goods as well as to the services. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood and learned the concepts of what do we mean by operations control management. We have also seen how control is been required in goods and services with respect to the operations control, how various activities can be conducted, and how the operational control activities can be implemented. And lastly, how the process of controlling of goods and service industry is being undertaken. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning. Thank you.